They thought fear would be enough. They thought sending 3 bikers, leather vests creaking, engines rumbling like thunder, would make me fold. What they didn't realize is that fear doesn't work the way they think it does. Not on me. Not on my family. Before we really dive in, drop a comment with your country down below. I want to see how far this story travels, because what happened on that afternoon in Oak Ridge Meadows deserves to be heard everywhere. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day where the sun spills gold over the fields, and the world looks calm on the surface. I pulled into the gravel drive, dust kicking up behind my truck, expecting nothing more dramatic than feeding the hens. But the moment I cut the engine, I froze. Sarah, my wife, wasn't where she normally would be. She stood rigid, backed against the chicken coop. Her voice carried a sharp steadiness, but her shoulders told another story. Tense, locked, ready to spring. 3 men boxed her in. Their bikes sat idling behind them, growling like caged beasts, chrome glinting. The patches on their vests looked like badges of arrogance. The one in front leaned closer, grinning with teeth the color of old paper, acting as if her space belonged to him. My door creaked as I stepped out. The sound of boots on gravel echoed louder than it should have. I hadn't worn combat gear in years, but the way my body shifted, the way muscle memory came alive, made it feel like I'd never left. The so-called leader spun around, squaring his shoulders. "This is HOA business," he barked, as though that gave him permission to stand on my property and menace my wife. Sarah's eyes darted to mine. No panic, not even close. She's never been one to show fear. But I saw it, the tiniest flicker of relief when she knew I was there. Even the strongest person knows that 3 against 1 isn't a fair game. I walked closer, slow, deliberate. "You've got 30 seconds to explain yourselves," I said, my voice low and sharp. The same tone that used to make rookies in training camps snap to attention without hesitation. The biker smirked, mistaking composure for weakness. "President Loretta doesn't appreciate being ignored," he said, drawing out each word like it was supposed to intimidate me. "Think of this as encouragement." I almost laughed. Loretta, our HOA's self-proclaimed queen, was always itching for a fight. She'd find us for the chicken coop, even though it wasn't under her jurisdiction. She'd threatened us over firewood stacks, over fence paint, over anything she thought gave her leverage. And now, she thought she could outsource her intimidation to leather and noise. 3 minutes? I told them flatly, my arms loose at my sides. "That's how long you've got to leave my property. Stay longer and you'll regret it." The leader sneered, puffing himself up, cracking his knuckles as if that was enough to scare me. Then he made the mistake. He leaned too close to Sarah. That was it. The air shifted. My body moved before my thoughts caught up. Years of training surged back, instinct taking over. I caught his wrist mid-motion, twisted hard, and dropped him face first into the gravel with a force that sent dust exploding upward. The ground shook beneath the impact. His partners froze. They hadn't expected resistance. They especially hadn't expected it from someone still holding a half-full coffee mug in one hand. "Who's next?" I asked, calm as ever. The second man lunged, throwing a punch so sloppy it looked like something out of a bad action flick. I slipped under it, hooked his arm, and used his own momentum to sling him straight into the wire fence of the coop. The hens went wild, feathers flying everywhere, clucking their outrage like a chorus of alarm bells. Sarah's mouth twitched into the smallest smirk. She knew I had it under control now. The third man faltered, his courage clearly leaking away. Instead of coming at me, he stomped a boot onto his bike's pedal, revving the engine loud, hoping noise would scare me where fists hadn't. I didn't stop walking until I was right at his handlebars. Then I grabbed, yanked, and pulled with everything I had. The heavy machine tipped, slamming sideways. His leg trapped beneath chrome and steel, he howled in pain, thrashing uselessly. I crouched low, my voice barely above a whisper. "Tell your boss this. If she ever sends people to threaten my wife again, I won't be so gentle. Next time, they won't walk away. The first two scrambled up, clutching bruises, eyes wide. One stammered, We didn't sign up for this. We thought it was just a scare job." Their engines sputtered to life as they limped off, leaving behind more pride than flesh. Sarah came to stand beside me, brushing dirt off her jeans like nothing had happened. She glanced at her watch, then at me. 3 minutes exactly, she said, and she wasn't wrong. By the time the dust settled and the last engine coughed its way down the street, the quiet of Oak Ridge Meadows felt heavier than usual. Even the chickens seemed to sense something had shifted. Sarah and I just stood there, listening to the fading growl of the bikes, breathing in the silence they left behind. I bent down, scooped up my coffee mug, which, miraculously, hadn't spilled more than a drop, and took a sip like it was just another Tuesday. Sarah shook her head, a laugh caught somewhere between disbelief and pride. Word travels faster than wildfire in a neighborhood like ours. By sundown, people across the cul-de-sac were whispering. Some peeked over fences, others slowed their evening walks, pretending to tie shoelaces while straining to catch details. They'd all seen the bikers arrive. They'd all noticed how quickly those same bikers limped away. And of course, it didn't take long before Loretta herself came storming in. I heard her before I saw her. Heels clacking down my walkway like gunfire, voice shrill enough to rattle windows. She didn't bother knocking. She jabbed a manicured finger toward my chest the second I opened the door. "You assaulted my contractors," she screeched, pearls bouncing against her blouse like a metronome. I raised an eyebrow. "Contractors? Is that what you're calling them now? They were here on official HOA business," she spat, face so red I thought she might combust. "You'll pay for the damages to their equipment, their medical bills, and I'll see to it you're fined for harassment of association representatives." Sarah stepped in beside me, arms crossed, calm, controlled, dangerous in her own way. "Funny," she said, "because from where I stood, those men weren't here to talk about flower beds or fences. They were here to corner me." Loretta opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "And just so we're crystal clear," I said, "every second of what happened was caught on my security cameras. High definition, multiple angles. And if you'd like, I can forward a copy to the sheriff's office tonight." For the first time, Loretta's voice faltered. Her eyes darted past me, to the black camera bolted under the eaves, then back to me. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered, though the shake in her tone betrayed her. I leaned closer. "Try me." She spun on her heel, muttering threats under her breath, but I could tell her plan had already begun to unravel. She'd sent intimidation expecting compliance. Instead, she'd walked straight into a trap of her own making. By the time the HOA meeting rolled around 3 days later, the neighborhood buzzed like a hornet's nest. Everyone had heard some version of the story. Some claimed I'd flattened all 3 bikers with one swing. Others said Sarah had fought alongside me, pitchfork in hand. Rumors grew taller with every retelling. I didn't bother correcting any of it. I knew the truth, and better yet, I had proof. The room was packed that night. Folding chairs squeaked as neighbors leaned forward, eyes gleaming with the thrill of gossip about to turn into spectacle. Loretta sat at the head of the long table, gavel clutched like a weapon, pretending she still had control. When my turn came to address the board, I didn't waste words. I carried my laptop to the projector, plugged in the cable, and pressed play. The room fell silent. On the wall, in crisp detail, 3 bikers prowled into my driveway. The leader stepped into Sarah's space. My truck door opened, and then, one by one, the bikers hit the dirt. Gasps echoed. A few chuckles slipped out when the second thug crashed through the coop fence and feathers burst across the screen. By the time the third man got pinned under his own bike, people were shaking their heads in disbelief. But it wasn't just the fight that sealed it. I'd clipped in the audio, too. The moment one of the men blurted out the words, "The HOA president paid us," The reaction was immediate. Phones whipped out. Dozens of neighbors recording the screen, saving it, making sure the evidence multiplied. Loretta shot out of her chair, shrieking, "That's taken out of context." "Out of context?" One of the neighbors called back. "He literally said it on camera." Another neighbor, glasses perched on his nose, stood with a printout of county ordinance. According to Section 18 to 42 of state law, that falls under harassment and criminal intimidation. Not to mention misuse of HOA funds if you paid them with association money. Loretta's face went from crimson to pale in seconds. She tried banging her gavel, but the noise was drowned out by voices rising all around her. Anger, laughter, outrage. Half the neighborhood was filming. The other half was demanding answers. And me? I just leaned back, arms folded, coffee mug in hand again, and let the evidence do the talking. For the first time in years, Loretta realized she wasn't the one running the show anymore. The meeting ended in chaos. Loretta tried to shout over the crowd, her voice cracking as she declared procedural violations and fake evidence. But no one was listening anymore. The tide had turned. Neighbors who once sat quietly in folding chairs now stood tall, waving their phones, quoting ordinances, demanding accountability. The very people she'd ruled over with fear and fines were finally seeing her for what she really was. And the bikers? Turns out humiliation is a powerful motivator. Within 48 hours, 2 of the 3 showed up at the sheriff's office on their own. Bruised, limping, and humbled, they handed over everything. Text messages from Loretta, screenshots of payment transfers, even a handwritten note on HOA letterhead promising compensation for a scare job. The sheriff called me personally. "You were right," he said. "This wasn't just an HOA dispute. This was conspiracy, plain and simple." By the end of the week, Loretta's world collapsed around her. Deputies arrived at her house with warrants in hand. The same woman who once strutted into meetings with pearl necklaces and smug smirks now stumbled out in handcuffs, screeching about community safety as neighbors stood on lawns watching. Some clapped. A few even cheered. Sarah and I stood on our porch, side by side, as the patrol cars rolled past. I lifted my coffee mug in a quiet salute. Sarah smiled. One of our neighbors shouted, "Better send a letter next time." The laughter that followed carried down the street. Loretta faced charges for harassment, intimidation, misuse of HOA funds, and conspiracy. She tried to spin it on the news, blaming overzealous board members and miscommunication. But the footage didn't lie, and neither did the bikers who had turned state's evidence to save their own skins. The HOA wasted no time. A unanimous vote ousted her from the presidency, and within a week reforms were drafted: clear financial oversight, open access to budgets, and strict boundaries on enforcement. No more backroom deals. No more intimidation masquerading as association business. For the first time since moving into Oak Ridge Meadows, the neighborhood felt like a community instead of a kingdom. And the bikers? That was the part no one saw coming. A month later, a beat-up pickup rolled into the neighborhood. In the bed were ladders, toolboxes, and buckets of paint. Out stepped the same men who had once revved engines at my wife. Gone were the leather vests and dark shades. In their place, work shirts, caps pulled low, eyes full of humility. One of them cleared his throat, almost too awkward to speak. "Court ordered restitution. We're supposed to do community service hours. Thought maybe we'd start here. Fix the coop fence. Patch a few driveways." Sarah raised an eyebrow. I just smiled. "As long as you don't corner my wife again, we'll get along just fine." They nodded quickly, almost tripping over each other to agree. And over the next few weeks, something strange happened. The same men who once came to scare us became part of the neighborhood's repair crew. They worked quietly, stayed polite, and left the leather behind. Humble, respectful, different. Loretta thought she was untouchable, that she could send muscle to enforce her ego. But intimidation backfired. All she managed to do was expose her own corruption and give the neighborhood the unity it had been missing. Sometimes HOA presidents think they run an empire. Loretta thought she had an army. What she forgot was simple: some people don't break. Some people fight back. And when they do, it's not just a victory for one family. It's a reminder to everyone watching. Power only lasts until someone stands up and says no more.